Every now and then I talk about a topic or a comic in this series in these videos, and somebody will point out to me, "Hey, I haven't read that. What are you talking about?" And I kind of forget at times. A lot of readers are coming into comics at all times, and so they haven't heard of some of these things that we talk about casually sometimes. And so that's why I'm going to tell you the story of Identity Crisis. Hey everybody, this is Perch. Identity Crisis was an event that DC did, and it was written by Brad Meltzer, art by Rags Morales. And Meltzer would go on, of course, to do those really kind of charming books for kids that talk about kind of who famous people through history are, and they're pretty cool. But Identity Crisis is about the rape of Sue Denby and then subsequent mind violation of Dr. Light and other villains in a story that was designed to introduce paranoia and mistrust in the DC universe, ultimately leading Ray Palmer's wife to ex-wife, I guess, to go insane and pretty much try and kill herself, eventually becoming Calypso. Hey, how's that? For spoilers, anyway. Identity Crisis is a funny little series because it was definitely the DC universe taking a darker turn. And what's curious about DC is that, generally speaking, I think on the whole, Marvel was a little bit more gritty, a little bit more realistic, a little bit darker. But every now and then, DC would tip dark and just do it in like they go all the way. Like when they decide to go for a darker plot, they don't screw around. They don't often do it with a lot of elegance. It's like, hey, we're going to do, here's some story about Flash friends and flashbacks, and here's a story about a rape, but now back to more flashbacks. Isn't that cool? We're talking gorillas. We got that over here. Identity Crisis, I went through it very quickly. Basically, the summary was that the book starts off with the elongated man, Jesus. Ralph Denby is a detective, and he's kind of a cute character. He was a lot of people got him on the radar with Justice League Europe, I believe. I think he was on that team. And elongated man, Christ. Anyway, so he's off doing some basic hero stuff, and his wife Sue Denby is killed, and she is burned alive and murdered horribly. And of course, this was a cute couple. For a lot of fans are coming into this 10 years earlier, having really enjoyed those the Justice League at the time, which was kind of a more comedy bent. You had the antics of Booster Gold and Blue Beetle. I'm convinced, by the way, that somewhere at DC, they are determined to just wreck all of these childhood. They're wrecking my childhood. They're wrecking all these things. I mean, we had Booster Gold and a really kind of horrific scene with Heroes in Crisis, and Blue Beetle is shot, and Ralph and Sue Denby wind up dead, and that's a later thing. I mean, Guy Gardner is next. I'm sorry for fans of Guy Gardner. All those good moments we remember from him. He is definitely, there's going to be some brutal, horrific story coming up. I guarantee it. Guy Gardner, bad things are coming. You just count on it. Anyway, so Sue Denby is killed. Her husband Ralph Denby, except Dibney, not Din. I don't know why I'm putting it in. Dibney is inconsolable, and they start researching this. All signs point to Dr. Light, and this reveals kind of an ugly fact of the Justice League, which was at one point Dr. Light, who was evil and crazy, came upon the Justice League America satellite and raped Sue. Actually raped her, and then is caught by the Justice League. And because the Justice League is simultaneously, this is a dark and gritty story and also a stupid one, they decide the best thing to do is to mind wipe Dr. Light and take the memory of both the hero's identity, Sue, and the others, as well as the rape, kind of out of his head. And they kind of turn him into a buffoon. What's weird is they don't turn him into a good citizen. They don't take away his villainous impulses. They don't try and rehabilitate him. They just take away his memories and make him kind of a dummy. So he's still a villain, but he's a dumb villain now. He's just kind of a jokey villain. It's kind of it's a weird it's an interesting approach to heroing. But as they kind of unpeel the onion, they just determine that they used old Zatanna to do this a number of times, including with some bigger name villains like the Wizard, the Florinic Man, Star Sapphire, Reverse Flash, Blockbuster. They also at one point they switched bodies with the Justice League, Superman and Batman, Flash, and those guys, and they then took out, the villains being kind of clever, they did took off their masks like, hey, you're Clark Kent, oh, you're Bruce Wayne, how about that, look who I am. And Zatanna comes across this and like, well, what do we do about these horrible villains that have murdered Barry Allen's mom? But whatever. Let's go ahead and erase their memories of this event, but leave them villains. I mean, it's one of those things where if you're gonna go for erasing somebody's memory, you got to go all the way. But whatever. So they kind of, this is a few comics where they discover, and it was written in kind of a funny way where it's like, you did this horrible thing, you violated someone's mind and took a memory away. Yeah, we did that. Oh man, and then that second time we did it. It's like, what, the second time? Yeah, that second time it was easier the second time, but still, see, it made us feel kind of weird. None of us were really happy about it, but we did it a second time, and then they kind of infer like Green Arrow is like, you won't want to say, but it's like, how many times did you do this? And it's like, well, maybe like a dozen times. Like, they roofied up. They use Zatanna's roofie powers to make her forget. What was it they called the rest of it? Forget me nows. They used some forget me nows and just kind of erased the whole villain. Anyway, so this goes on, and Dr. Light then regains his memory, and he hires Deathstroke, and then some more shenanigans occur, and they wind up killing Tim Drake's dad, who also shoots Boomerang and kills him. So there's just some bodies now all over the place, and then it's revealed, surprise, that I forget this part. They're kind of trying to figure out who's doing who's doing this, and suddenly the Shadow Thief, in kind of a clever moment, like opens up a little portal and stabs Firestorm right through the chest and makes him blow up, and so that happens, and so he just detonates, and then then comes the next kicker, which is while they were erasing, while they were turning Dr. Light into a dumbass. Batman comes in. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing to Dr. Light over there?" And they're like, "Well, he just raped Sue, so we're making him into kind of a corny villain instead of a mean villain." And Batman's like, "That's not a good plan. What are you doing?" And so they erase Batman's memory too. So they go ahead and mind wipe him as well. It's pretty much inferred in this comic that Zatanna's as forget me now pretty much everybody in the DC universe at one point or another. I mean, you think about some of the struggles she's had with Constantine, and you know she's forget me now John a few times. I'm just saying. It had to have happened. Anyway, so as they're looking into Sue Dibney's brain, they discover footprints on her brain. There's little footprints of somebody hiking around on the brain, and they come to the conclusion that it's actually Jean Loring, who was this was all an elaborate scheme to get her ex-husband back. She wanted to reunite with Ray Palmer, and she wanted to get back together. So the best way to do it was to steal some of his shrinking stuff and then walk around on Sue's brain and accidentally kill her, and then kind of weird reverse frame Tim Drake and get those people shot, and this would bring Ray back into her arms. So the reveal that Jean was insane was an interesting one, to say the least. You didn't see it coming because it was dumb. But anyway, so this story all kind of concludes with people kind of just unpleasant. I mean, poor Wally West was the Flash during all this, and Wally is like, this is not my game, man. I like how did this happen? How do we get here? Like he is befuddled, and you just get like Wally's like, yeesh, and it's like maybe that erased from existence by Dr. Manhattan's not so bad after all, because yikes, that's all I'm saying. So anyway, so that's how this whole thing kind of wrapped up. Ralph would go on to kind of in a brooding kind of dark way try and avenge some of the murder and just try and work as a force for good. But then he gets killed, and Jean Loring becomes Eclipso. So that goes on. Reception to this book was mixed. Some people thought it was really cool because it was a different kind of grittier, more realistic take on the DC universe. Other people didn't like the idea of mind wipes and rapes in the Justice League satellite, which, it's solid point. What's curious is that as time has gone by, if you go back and read this comic, and now the shock value is worn off because, I mean, at this point we've seen Wonder Woman like kill Max Lord, and we've had the DC universe rebooted at least twice, and Superboy has killed a bunch of people. I mean, we've a lot of ground has been covered. Arsenal, drug addict, and I mean, there's a bunch of things that have occurred that the punch of this story is gone. And so with the shock value, that punch gone, none of this makes. I mean, the comic is really goofy. Like, you do find yourself asking a lot of questions, like, "Hey, why wouldn't the Justice League, if they're going committing to erasing memories and changing people's personalities around, maybe they could make the person not a villain? How about that? How about you make him not a villain at all while you're doing this? I mean, seems kind of wrong." And just the various, like, nobody winds up looking really good in this comic. They all just kind of come across like, what the F are you thinking? And so it's interesting. It's there's some people who still love this comic. There's some people who absolutely hate it with in the bottom of their hearts. I mean, I've read worse comics, but it is one of those where time has aged it pretty badly. I think it is not. Like, it is not held up well, and it comes across like, why did we write a story about Sue getting raped? Like, it's like, yeah. And what's curious about it too is, Gail Simone and the whole women in refrigerators thing was really aggressive for Kyle's girlfriend getting put into a refrigerator, and that's bad. Sure, but Sue got like raped on the satellite, and then they turned this villain into a weird vegetable. I mean, I don't know. I that seems worse to me. I mean, I'm not saying it's good that she got put in a refrigerator, but I am saying that I mean, she got raped, and then they erased some brains, and then like a jealous ex-girlfriend stomped around on her brain and then tried to burn her up to hide the evidence. And I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, I think priorities, people. I mean, I guess the other woman was, stuffed in a fridge, and that probably ruined the food. Maybe that was why everybody got so bent out of shape with the women in refrigerators, because they ruined a bunch of food. That's my prediction. Actually, it was more about the food. Anyway, what do you think? Did you read Identity Crisis? Did you enjoy it? Was this a comic you loved, hated? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, introduce to a friend. Let's get some new people in here and have some fun. Follow me on Twitter or Facebook at Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.